All right, folks, welcome back. So, according to the master plan that we put together a couple of episodes ago, we are supposed to start today on putting together the ability to add products as a vendor into this application. And to do that, we need to scaffold the page so that we can get to a page with products. And as I put together the source code for this, there was a lot to it, and I really don't want to rush through this aspect just for the sake of staying on schedule. I mean, these are primarily educational videos, and I do need to kind of call an audible if I feel we're getting a complex concept that might be a good opportunity to take my time and explain it better. And so I do want to do that here. We'll try to stay on schedule roughly, or maybe we will revisit on Sunday and adjust as needed. But I did want to take some time and kind of walk through the basic setup of this app. So today's going to be about the iOS scaffolding portion. So make sure you have an iOS emulator or device hooked up to run the app on. And there is a Cupertino nav bar that you get that looks like this right out of the box. You can also use the material nav bar, but iOS users, since iOS 11, expect to see a pattern pretty similar to this here. Well, this is identical to this here, where you've got this large title, and if you scroll up, it does kind of suck into the old style. And Flutter absolutely allows you to do that. But it is a little bit convoluted. And so I want to do that because I want this to look like a modern iOS app. We've got the nav bar down here that is entirely in the iOS style. We've got the iOS icons. Somebody would walk into this app and know exactly what to do if they were an iOS user. And that's precisely what I want. I want to play off those common patterns to allow them to come to my app and have very little onboarding time. And so this can be accomplished in Flutter by embedding scaffolds. So we end up kind of putting scaffolds inside of scaffolds, and this whole outer portion is a Cupertino scaffold. And inside of that, we put a nested scroll view, and then inside of that, we can put Sliver widgets. And Sliver widgets take up a portion of the screen and can adjust to the user's movement. And that's what we're going to do with this Sliver app bar. This is the Sliver app bar here. It takes up this much space when you've scrolled up, and then it expands down to this much space when you scroll down. There's a sliver body that's doing the opposite. It's taking up this much space, but when you scroll up, it expands, so it now has this much space, top to bottom. And inside of this sliver body, we're going to put the Cupertino tab scaffold. So this whole portion here, from the app bar down all the way to the bottom, including the tabs, is a Cupertino tab scaffold. There are two kinds of Cupertino scaffolds. There's the page scaffold, which we've used already, and then there's the tab scaffold that allows for tabs and navigation inside of the scaffold. All right, and then inside the tab scaffold, we're going to place one or more. We're going to place three actual Cupertino scaffolds that we can switch between. So this in here is a Cupertino scaffold, not down to the bar, but up to the top and down to the top of the bar. It's surrounded by the tab scaffold, which goes down, including the bar, but doesn't include the app bar. And that's all surrounded by the Cupertino scaffold, outer Cupertino scaffold, which is surrounding the whole thing. Okay, so that's what we're going to build today, and I think we'll start from the outside in so you can see things as they happen on the page. So let me get this out of here, and we'll bring it back in as we build the components. I'm going to fire up the emulator. All right, so here's our awesome landing page, and what I envision here is kind of a dashboard that might have a list of cards with the upcoming markets. And if you're a vendor, you might have a badge here for like a panel here to go to be a customer, or a panel to be a vendor. It might have some badges on it with alerts of, like pending orders, or, we may not need any stinking badges, whatever we decide to do there. God, I hope some of you get that movie reference. But when you click the vendor panel, it's going to take you to a vendor page. And so I'm going to build that in screens. So we'll do screens, and we'll do vendor.dart, and that will wind up being this outer box. So it's going to be the Cupertino scaffold that contains the Sliver apps And then those in turn contain the Cupertino tab scaffold. So it's a class called vendor, and it extends a stateless widget. And it has build method, and we want to do our split logic. So I'm going to import Dart.io, and then I'm going to come down here, and if the platform is iOS, I'm going to give it a Cupertino, and otherwise I'm going to do just a material scaffold with a body with a text. This is material. So we'll just kind of leave that up, center it too. That's just a placeholder for us. So I want to return a Cupertino scaffold. Cupertino page scaffold. And I want to give it a child. Now that child is going to be a nested scroll view, and that's what is going to contain the slivers. So I'm going to move that to another line. I'll move this down. Get my semicolon there. And so my header sliver builder is obviously going to be where my nav bar is, and the body is going to be the remaining portion of the screen. So the header sliver needs a build context of context, and it needs a boolean with inner box is scrolled. And in here we can return an array of widgets, but we're just going to return one. And this is where our nav bar is going to go. And I definitely am going to have at least one more scaffold that I build for a customer, possibly one for a market manager. So I want to make sure these are standardized. And so I'm going to build a widget here in the widgets folder. I'll call it new file. And we'll just build a navbar.dart. And then I can build, just like we did with buttons and text field, a standard widget that I can call upon when needed. So that will be an abstract class. And we'll call it app navbar. And so this will give you either a material or a Cupertino navbar. So I'm going to start with a static Cupertino sliver navigation bar. And I need to bring in the Cupertino package in here. And I'm going to call that Cupertino navbar. Just to save ourselves some typing. That's a very long title. And so parentheses, we'll do named parameters. And I want to be able to specify the title. So string title. And also, I'm going to want the build context in here. So we'll call that context. And let me stretch that across. So then we can open up our curly braces. I'm actually going to call this Cupertino navbar even. Let's shorten it even more. And let's return a Cupertino sliver navigation bar. And let's give it a large title with a text of title for now. All right, let's save that and let's come back out to vendor. And so for our header sliver builder, let's do app navbar. So we'll bring in this widget here, and then we can specify that we want the Cupertino navbar. And our title will be vendor name. So we had, when we planned, we were going to iterate through here, and one of the iterations was to be able to give the vendor the opportunity to create a profile with their information, which would of course include their business name. And so we'll eventually put that here, but for now we'll just put vendor name. And we also want a context here of just our context. Just want to pass that through. And for body, this is where we want to put the tab scaffold. So this is our sliver body, and the Cupertino tab scaffold is going to go in there. For now, I think I'll just put a center widget there because I'd like to actually start getting this on the screen so it's meaningful to you. So I guess I could have just done a placeholder widget instead of the text saying placeholder. Oh well. I do need to put a return there. Whoops. Get rid of that warning. All right, so now we just need to actually see this on our screen, we need to get from our landing to our vendor. So let's go to screens and revisit our landing page. And let's just create a simple way to get to that vendor page. And so in our build, let's do our typical split logic. So we bring in Dart IO, and of course put import in front of it, or it doesn't know what you're talking about. And we do platform.isIOS else. So we're going to return a Cupertino page scaffold. And the child is going to be page body. So this is just kind of the typical pattern we've established for the split logic by platform. We're going to pass it into context because we're going to be using a navigation, and we're going to need the context for that. So we'll give it our page body. And material will get page body as well. Also needs a scaffold. Let's wrap that with a widget. No, I can't wrap that with a widget. I've messed it up royally. Let's do scaffold. There. All right, so for our page body, oh, we also want to return there. Page body, let's do a column, and I just want to do a button in the middle. So let's do main axis alignment center. And then the children, I'm just going to have one. Let me get my semicolon here. I'm just going to have a button. So let's do one of our app buttons that we created. So we'll bring that in. We'll do button text will be vendor page. Button type, we'll do button type straw. And then our on press, so we want this to be a navigation button. So on our pressed, we need to give it a function. So we'll create a function of navigator, push name, context, and we'll call our route/vendor. And so we need to visit the routes page. So in SRC, we've got routes.dart. Let's copy and paste a new route. And we'll call it vendor, and we'll switch the page to vendor. And we'll do the same thing down here for Cupertino routes. We'll just copy login, paste it and change login to vendor, and then change the destination from login to vendor. All right, so if we've got everything saved, we should be able to hit our vendor page, and we are brought into our scaffold, which will contract when we scroll up and expand when we scroll down. And so revisiting our sketch here, we have built the outer Cupertino scaffold, we have built the Sliver AppBar, at least in construction, still looks terrible. And then we've built the body, which is also just a placeholder. And so the next thing we need to do is to build the Cupertino tab scaffold and put the tabs for products, orders, and accounts in there that we want to have. So I think I'm going to save that for the next episode. This is kind of heavy stuff, and the tab scaffold is a little bit involved, and so we'll come back next time and we'll do that then. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.